Today I'm going to revisit some platters I made for a Melbourne grocer's a few years ago, but these days my studio is so much smaller. I have room to make one at a time, so I'm making a large oval platter, thrown and hand-built and big enough for an enormous lasagna. I'm using nearly 3 kilos of clay for the walls, and I'll need another 3 kilos for the base. I'm using a large bat. A bat extends the size of your wheel head. You'll need to use some kind of bat or make a smaller version. So I start by making the wall and I center the clay. My clay is quite soft and I recommend a soft clay for this. Once I've centered the clay, I flatten the clay. I flatten the clay nearly to the edge of the bat. I bring the clay out quite wide. And then I push down into the clay all the way through to the bat. I'm just making the walls here, so there's no base. I open the clay out. And I'm bringing all that clay out into the walls. You don't have to do this all at once. It is quite a bit of clay to move around. Now I bring the walls upwards. I want to be going slow at this point. You want to be aware that the outer edge of the clay is going so much faster than the inside. In other words, the edge of your clay is covering much more distance over a set period of time. So you want to adjust the speed of the wheel. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to control. I bring up the walls. I want to make them straight and even, and not too thin. The walls need to be really sturdy enough to distort into an oval shape. So my plan is this: make the walls, let the walls firm up, wire through, gently shape into an oval, and then roll out a slab and attach the walls to the slab. And then I straighten the walls. I don't wire through yet. I let it firm up a little. If I wire through, it's going to distort the wall. Now for the base. I take the clay I've left for the base and I'm going to roll it out. I start by just hitting the clay. If my table were a little sturdier, I could also just slam my clay down until it starts to approach the right thinness. And then I roll with my rolling pin. I roll my clay and flip, making sure it's rolled on both sides. I want the thickness to match the thickness of the walls. This will add to the durability of the dish. To get the clay to the right thickness, I'm using 2 battens of the right height. And my rolling pin doesn't reach, so I use a dowel. A piece of thick dowel you can buy from any hardware store works just as well. And then I set aside to firm up a little with the walls. In the meantime, I mix up some joining slip from the same clay. And now I'm ready to build. I wire through the walls and I gently squeeze into an oval form. The shape of the dish is getting narrower and longer. So now I'm ready for the base. The base and walls have firmed up to about the same moisture content. This is going to be really beneficial for the join. And using a knife, I cut around the outline of the oval. If you enjoy our videos, remember to subscribe, like and comment. When I made a lot of these, I would make a template so that I could repeat the size and shape, making the dishes more uniform. And now it's a matter of score, slip and join. Now I add a decent layer of slip. The slip is just my clay mixed with water. And there's so much of this that I'm going to speed through some of these parts. So I slip, then I add the walls, give them a bit of a jiggle just to get them well sighted, and then I can start with the joining. I like to take a bit of the clay from the base and just smush it into the clay in the wall. Once this is done all the way round, I add a bead of clay. I make a coil of clay and then just push it into that inner join. This bead of clay does two things. It creates a rounded surface between the walls and the base, which means your dish will be much easier to clean. Cleaning aside, this bead of clay also reinforces the join. So this is either tedious or really quite satisfying, depending in how much of a hurry you are. I smooth the clay on all of the joins and then I can set aside to dry. But a few months along and I would probably leave it covered for longer. I dry covered in the first instance and then slowly uncover. It's no problem in the studio at the moment. It's pretty cold and damp. Once fully dry, I bisque fire. So now I'll pour and then brush glaze on the outside. One of the things I would add in making these is that you want a really good glaze fit. But are they really oven proof? Well, this is where it gets a little tricky, and it depends on how you take care of them. Avoid really cold to really hot and warm them slowly. And of course, cool slowly too. We want to avoid thermal shock. When I do get this one fired, the first thing I'll be making is a massive lasagna. If you want to make something a little more manageable in size, check out my bread baker. And as always, happy potting.